Over the years, fishing the Pellet Waggler has been responsible for many match wins. But there's definitely two different styles of fishing it. There's a style that I call the carnage style, where you're feeding as much as you can, casting inside your bait and catching the fish on the splash. And then there's the more patient style, which is ideal for targeting those bigger and wiser fish that have seen it all before. And in this Match Masterclass, that is exactly what we're going to cover. Right then, as I mentioned, we have come to Barford today on the Pleasure Lake, hopefully targeting some big fish. There's some real big fish in here, but taking a look at a slightly more patient pellet waggler approach. I briefly touched on it there, but for me, there's definitely two different ways. Like I said, there's the real active carnage way where you put in a light float right in amongst your bait and you're catching fish on the splash, and it's explosive. It can be a very, very good way of doing it. But I have found in recent years, and I know I'm not the only one, that definitely they wised up to that, and actually sometimes the noise is a negative. And when you get like that, certainly these bigger fish, there's definitely sort of a little patient way, maybe setting a little trap kind of thing, that is definitely worth looking at. So that's what we're looking at today. This one's coming to that nicely. Hopefully we're gonna have plenty of fish and show you a few little tips to help you catch them as well. That is a mega start. So I'm going to go straight into it now, and I'm going to fish away for 5 or so minutes and show you what I mean about this patient style. We'll come on to tackle, floats, baits, all that sort of stuff like that in a moment, but the main point here is about the style in which you fish. What I'm saying is this patient pellet waggler approach. So obviously with the pellet wag, you always need to have a bit of bait introduced, and you're trying to drive those fish up. So as I'm talking to you throughout this video, you'll see I've got a cat up on my hand just dripping in a few pellets to try and get that competition going. But what I'm going to do, and how I'm fishing this sort of patient style, is what I've been saying to you, is I'm not crashing my float in right where those pellets are. I think definitely the bigger, warier carp are used to that. So I go past my spot, probably talking 2-3 meters, something like that. You may catch one on the splash. At some point, I'm sure we probably will. But then I'm feeding my bait, and I'm now winding my float right in amongst that. Now this is where, oh, I missed the bite tray. This is where you have to play around all day, because it changes and it gets harder. But if you've watched the Matrix Underwater, the recent pellet waggler video that went out, it's a real eye-opener into, it's all about timing, because unfortunately your free pellets that you're feeding, they sink quicker than your hook bait, because they haven't got the line dragging it down or anything like that. So it's all about trying to get your bait to fall in amongst those hook baits, or those freebies, sorry. So I'm going to go past again, and you have to play around with how quick you reel into your feed to get a bite. Now we got one pretty quickly there, so I'm going to feed my bait and I'm going to wind straight into it. Now at some points you might have to wait couple of seconds before you reel into it. Sometimes you might have to feed and then cast. You really do need to play around with your timings. I can't emphasize enough how much two important things on this method. One is timing, which I've just mentioned a little bit about how quick you reel into that feed, and the other one is play around with the depth. No different to fishing on the pole or anything like that. Play around with depth, because that will change throughout the day. At the moment I'm about 3.5 foot deep, and this style of pellet waggler fishing definitely works in deeper lakes. I think what I said, the carnage way, where you're catching fish in the splash, that's perfect if you catch them like 12 inches, 2 foot deep. That works really well actually. But when it's a bit more patient, trying to trick one, definitely this sort of style of fishing works better. So I've gone past my spot, I'm going to feed some pellets, and I'm going to reel straight into those. Now hopefully my bait is sinking in and around those freebies that I've just fed. And strangely, when I said like you're targeting these big wary carp, this is one of the lakes, and I know there's a few around the country actually. So this one here at Barford on the Pleasure Lake, you've got hayfields, very popular for it, but the fish will have it hanging there. What I mean hanging there is now obviously that pellet should be at the end of its fall, it's just suspended in the water, but you will catch like that. Certain venues, certainly I think smaller fish, you don't really catch like that. If your bait's not moving, they don't grab it. So this one is definitely a bit more sit there, be patient. You can fire bait at your float and just let it fall past. But really, when you're going to get a bite, for me, your main kill time is that 5 seconds after you've fed and you've reeled your bait into it. So I'm just going to leave it a little bit longer this time. I'm going to go past, probably 3-4 meters past. I'm going to feed. Oh, that was rubbish. Bit windy here, it's blowing them out of the pouch. I'm going to feed and reel back into that. Now this is where, if it's going to go for me, is in this next 5 to 10 second window. Oh, I haven't missed bite. Thought that was the one. 2 now we've missed. Couple of missed bites. So it's maybe I need to come a bit shallow, but this is what I was saying about working out through your whole session about what's going on. Reading the water, let the fish tell you what they're doing. So I'm going to give it a little bit longer this time, because maybe if I'm getting bites, it's because they're coming higher. So I'm going to feed my bait. I'm going to give that a couple of seconds before I reel my float into it. Maybe then I'll be at a better depth to intercept them. Like I said, it's such a learning curve. What works for the first hour as well might not work for the rest of the day. You do have to change things about. I can see when that wind drops, I don't know if you'll pick it on camera, but there's definitely a lot of fish there because there's a few bubbles and that coming up. And if you were fishing this style, you'd definitely have a bomb rod and you'd fish over it. But obviously that's not what we're covering today. We are trying to cover this sort of style of pellet waggler fishing. But what I think I'll do is I'll carry on. I'm sure it's going to take a couple more minutes and we'll have another fish to show you. And hopefully it's going to be one of the fish that's known for in here. You know, they do go to, for match fish anyway, very, very big. There we go. Didn't take too long and we are connected to another nice fish, hopefully. That wind is sort of picking up, then it dies down. It's hard to know what it's doing. But yeah, that one actually, the bite just came when it was suspended there. And honestly, like 2 or 3 years ago, if you'd have asked me, like, am I going to catch a waggler? I'd no, because I was obsessed with the carnage way of getting your float right in amongst it, feeding loads of bait, and yeah, there's definitely a place for that, and we have done a video on that. But this one also has its place, certainly for these fish that have seen it all. I know I've already said that, but definitely does make a difference. And I was actually thinking about just changing my depth, and I might do. Actually, saying that, this is probably one of the smallest fish I've ever caught out of Barford. But yeah, I was going to change my depth slightly because I had those 2 missed bites and I saw a couple of fish just flick the surface with a tail, and I'm thinking, are they a little bit shallower? And because those 2 bites I missed come pretty much as the float was reeled into it, it's definitely something worth a try. This one is going to cause me all sorts of problem under the rod tip. You find that these new sort of fresh fish really, oh, that's a terrible bit, and they really do hang on, these fresh ones. I'm sure the next one we catch is going to be a proper Barford Place Lake big one, and it won't be giving us that much trouble. But I mean, it's not tiny, but it certainly is small for this lake. So let's have a look at it anyway. And what we'll probably do is we'll move on to having a look at the tackle, because it is nice and simple. It is generic for a lot of pellet waggler fishing, but if you want to get out there and give it a go, then you need to know exactly what to use to get it right. So that's a cool one. We'll get it slipped back and we'll have a look at the rig. Right then, let's get on and have a look at the tackle. Now this won't take particularly long because it's the same pellet waggler setup that I use regardless of which style I'm fishing. More about it is the way you're feeding, casting and stuff like that. But if you want to get into it and have a look, then this is what I personally use. So I'm going to start off with an Aquos Ultra C 11-foot waggler rod. Does the job absolutely perfectly. Doesn't matter what size the fish are. For me, an 11-foot waggler is just ideal for most situations. A 3000 Aquos reel, and that's loaded with 8-pound line. That is heavy for my waggler fishing, I must admit. That's one thing I changed, but that's purely venue dependent. I know that was a little baby we just caught, but I've had fish into here like 15, 16, 17, but they're big, some of them. So yeah, that's the only reason I'm up to 8-pound line on this particular setup. Normally I would have 6. And then we come down to the wagglers and how we attach them. So you can see there, it's attached with a matrix waggler attachment, which is basically 3 rubbers below it, 1 above it. And that just stops any pressure on the cast actually making those stops move. But they are nice to move. And what I did say, we're going to go a bit shallower. So you can see how easy they are to move. I'm just going to go like 10 inches shallower for the next cast. And you can just move that throughout the day. And then the actual waggler itself, I use the foam wagglers. This is a 6 gram because, like I said, it's the style we're fishing on. A heavier float, I can cast it past where I'm feeding, reel it back into it. But if I wanted to do what I was saying about cast your float right in amongst your feed, I'd lower the gram of the float. You can see here I've got a selection of wagglers. I always carry them with me. But I'd probably pop on like a little 3 gram, and then I'd cast that right in amongst the bait. So that's where your float selection comes into it. Are you casting past and reeling in, or are you plopping straight in amongst it? Because that's where a nice lighter one makes a bit less noise, would do the job. And they're so easy to change. They're just on this little quick change adapter. So you can change your float in absolutely seconds. Should the wind swing around now and be in my face, I can put an even heavy one on, stuff like that. And then all I have on there is a 12-inch hook link, and that is 020. Again, very, very strong, size 14 of a bait band. You've probably seen that set up a million times pellet waggler fishing. So I don't think it's the actual setup that causes the damage, it's the way that you fish it. So let's see if we can go out there and do the same again. So we'll go on to some baits and that in a moment, but I've just been talking to you for a little bit, so I'm just going to feed some bait before I go out there, see if that helps us. You're only talking 5 to 10 pellets every time, and I'm going to go same as we were. I've shallowed up a little bit like I've just shown you, but I'm going to go slightly past. Possibly we catch one now. And there you go. Do you know what? That is well worth showing, because I know that's not how I'm trying to fish at this particular moment. But what I did, I fed some bait, cast probably only 2 meters past it, and one grabbed it. And I said to you that that might happen throughout the session, so that you sort of get 2 bites at the cherry. You can catch them on the splash. And another thing that's well worth thinking about is that's my first cast at that other depth, and I said to you that we'd missed those 2 bites and I've seen a couple of fish. So maybe it wasn't the fact that it was on the splash, maybe it was just at the right depth. So a real good indication that we're starting to get things right. And if we can put a run together like that, I'm pretty sure that this one feels like it's going to be a bit bigger. Perhaps what the Pleasure Lake is more known for, and you can see how you would put a weight together. I mean, again, it's definitely not massive, but it's getting on towards 8 pound, I would imagine. So yeah, you wouldn't need many of those in a match. Lovely little fish. You've got sort of white tips. It's very, very lively though. Calm down, calm down. Probably so lively that I'm not going to risk holding it up because it is full of energy. So I'm going to get that straight back and we'll repeat that process again. So he's gone in there. Thank you very much. Let's see if we can get back out there and catch on, because there was a couple of bits I was going to tell you there before that fish interrupted us. So back on with another pellet. And because that worked last time, we're going to feed a few pellets before I go out there. Now I'm feeding these pellets exactly where I'm reeling my float back into. Now we're going to go past it a couple of meters. Nice if we repeat that again, wouldn't it? See if we get a bite there. Not this time. See, it doesn't work every time like that. But now we're going to go back to what I was saying, the more patient way. So feed slightly short of that float, reel into it, let that pop up, try and sort out the loop in my line, and we are fishing again how we were a second ago. Now another thing to try and make your life easier is you'll notice my rod sits here on a rest on my lap, so my hands are actually free. But when I'm not feeding, I do have my hand on my reel because I want to be, I want to be responsive as quick as I can. You quite often find they hook themselves, but definitely striking at any bites. But yeah, because it's windy, luckily today the wind's off my back, I have my rod tip just under the water. You can see it sitting there only like an inch under the water, but that tries to keep as much of the line sort of under the water as I can. When you reel it back, you sink it a little bit, mate. You're never going to have all your line sunk. It's just not going to happen. But because you're in and out quite regularly, that doesn't matter so much. So that one we've gone way past. The wind's got that one. I'll be amazed if we catch one where that's landed. But more importantly, feed and reel into that feed. Pops up. I'm going to feed straight on top of it as well, hopefully giving me a couple of goes at it. So one of those layers of pellets will hopefully be falling roughly where I'm fishing. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, that's the first cast of this depth and you catch one instantly. And it's working out, was that a rogue one? Was it on its own? Or do we need to change again? Right, here we go. One more go. Keep your eyes on it all the time. Feed your bait, wind it into it. What I'm going to do is fish away like I've just explained now. See if we can really work out a pattern of where they are. Change the depths a bit. This is one of those lakes where sort of 8 foot does work very, very well. So we're going to change that, catch a few more, and then I've not got too long left until this bag of pellets has run out. So we'll open another bag of pellets and I'll show you exactly what I do with the bait. Now the fish coming towards the net now, it's been pretty steady to be honest with you, definitely building up a couple of patterns in the way that we're catching fish, and I'll talk you through those in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully get this one in, and then we'll, oh, it's tiny, it's a little F1. That's the smallest, we've had some real big fish in that little bit of fishing we just done there, like to well into double figures some of those fish. So very, very good way of doing it. I can't remember the last F1 I caught here, but yeah, little F1. So we'll get that back. Shows that anything will be catchable on the pellet waggler at the right time. But what I said we'll take a look at is the bait. Now it couldn't be any more simple, it really couldn't, but I was running out of baits. As you can see, there's not much left here in my tub. Now, what I do when pellet waggler fishing, same as most people, it's fishery only pellets here. You can tell they're fishery only pellets because they put like green and red ones in there. You can probably see when I'm pulling them out there that, yeah, there's green and red ones. So you can tell that you're using those. So basically in a match situation, everybody would be using those, and yeah, they'd absolutely work. I think 8mm pellets of pellet waggler for me, certainly when you're trying to target like the bigger fish that I'm trying to fish for in here, 8mm rather than 6mm. So I could just use them like that, but I like to, certainly in the summer, add some oils. Now, whether it's the citrus oil, the tiger nut, the tuna, anything like that, pick one that you want, and literally it's just a case of just giving it a squirt and then just leave them soaking in that as you're feeding them. Shake those up. Now they've got a little bit of coating. Now, two things I really get the advantage for. First of all, what that does is actually these fishery pellets are really good. Some places you go though, they're not as good, and you get very variable sink rates. Some float before they sink, some sink straight away, and you're creating an inconsistent pellets, but with a little bit of oil on them, what you create is a perfect consistent sink rate. So that's why I just do it naturally in the summer with all fishery pellets. And then obviously as a secondary bonus, you've got the attraction of the flavour. I mean, that smells lovely. So as soon as those pellets hit the water, they're going to be leaking off a little bit of oil and stuff, and definitely get those fish looking around for it. You literally don't need much. As I just done it there, shows exactly what I'm going to do. So I said to you that there's a couple of things I've noticed. So the best depth has certainly been probably what we're fishing now, which is about three and a bit foot. So we'll go back out there again. We're doing the same routine as we've always been doing, but the feeding sort of a pattern has emerged. So I'm going past my spot still, waiting to see if I get a bite, because we've only had that one that we had when I was talking to you earlier, but I'm now feeding just short, I'm reeling into that, and then I'm feeding straight away again. And what I think's happening is those first pellets that are going in, they're getting the fish looking round. And as I said to you earlier, my hook bait swings in slower than the first 3 offerings. So that second lot that I just fed, I think once that gets to about my hook bait level, somewhere in that water column, that's when I'm getting my bites. And a lot of my bites have come within the first, well, by now, I would say, oh, that was just on the edge of how long I was going to wait. I was going to recast. And yeah, it seems to be that that's what's getting the most confidence. So I'm going to go past quite a way. Hopefully we catch one on the splash. There hasn't been many on the splash at all today. Feed my bait, reel into it, and then straight away feed your next one. So hopefully they're already looking for that. My hook bait's now slightly higher in the water than those pellets. These pellets go in, and eventually they catch up my hook bait, and I'm pretty sure that's what's been happening. So that's sort of what we've worked out for today's session. Everywhere is going to be very, very different. Then after those 2 initial feeds, I do slow it down because I don't want to feed so much bait all the time that I'm driving those fish right high in the water, because like I said, that's the completely different way of fishing the waggler in my opinion. So you need to feed it sensibly, but you do need to keep regularly putting a bit of bait in. And then the other thing that I've noticed, so for how long it's sitting out there now, and I said to you earlier that this is one of the venues that they do have it just sitting there hanging, but it's definitely more productive if you're fishing deeper when it's sitting there hanging. So if I've left it, I've had 2 fish today that have been about 6 or 7 foot, and those fish have all been at that depth while it's just hanging there. Once I've come shallower than that, they want it moving, which is quite often, that's not just today, I'll be honest, that's probably a very good rule of thumb for every time that you're fishing. If you're fishing shallower, try and get a bit of movement in your bait. But if you are dropping to those depths, sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 foot, that's a very, very good way of catching fish with your bait, just suspend it. And I think what I think, that's a good bite that is. Surprised that one wasn't on, but what I think is happening in that situation is I think if they're catching, or if you're catching them really shallow, they're definitely noise fish, you know, they're coming to the noise. So they're actually eating pellets as they're moving. But if you catch them at sort of 6, 7, 8 foot deep, those fish are definitely feeding properly, you know, waiting for the pellets to sink down and then feeding on top of those pellets. So that's why I think that works. But what I want to do is I want to try and catch another one to finish on, really. It'd be nice if we caught one of those bigger fish for you. I'd love to catch one of the real big ones because they are very big, but it's not been taking too long. It's been fairly consistent. So we'll keep plodding away, and then we will have hopefully one last Barford carp to show you. There we go, one to finish on. It's been great fun. Not a massive fish, but I'm still going to give myself £8 for that, so well worth catching and like a proper weight builder. And I hope that it's proved to you that there's definitely a different way of fishing a pellet waggler. There's the patient way or the carnage way. You pick which one's best in the day and your results can be very good. So I do hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button if you did enjoy this video, because we will be back soon with another Match Masterclass.